Hello, I'm Joe Alter once again. Beautiful sunny day out here in California. Feeling in a good mood. Also feeling in a good mood because the tide seems to be shifting for uh, a lot of us that have suffered through all of this for a very long time. I think we've all faced a lot uh, in the last 10 years. And, we see, some possibilities that things could be better, but it feels like we have a few years ahead of us that are still going to be really hard. There are central ways to fix this problem, but they're not the usual, and the reason why the usual people aren't doing them is because uh, it's been a 30-year campaign of transforming the whole Overton window of how we view the Constitution. And it's little subtle things that, as I said before, are not obvious. And it's the consequences are immense and accelerating exponentially. This year and this last year in particular, uh, they've closed the loop. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here for a little bit and, you know, speculate on motives. But if you read Project 2025, they're very specific about flooding the zone in the courts. They're very specific about using executive orders and using uh, uh, DOJ, OLC memos and DOJ oversight uh, to close that loop that they needed to close to make all this change happen. And now they're trying to rush it through as fast as they can, like a wrecking ball. Because once it's wrecked, these institutions that they've broken didn't it's not like you can just place a want ad, you know, looking for an honest justice department. It's not like you can just place a want ad looking for expertise, in every segment of science and medicine, and all the things that we spend our tax dollars on to make government work for us. And the thing is, if you look back at it, you see it one piece at a time that the the uh, the billionaire class, who were just millionaire class 10 years ago, are now the billionaire class and on their way to becoming the trillionaire class, where our wages have been flat for 30 years. It's because they've had some help. Uh, you know, I, I think, politically, when you look at it, Democrats, Republicans, it's a really fucking obvious choice. The Democrats are the only ones that are even remotely in our corner. But we have a real Democrat problem. And that is that this decisions like Citizens United uh, are so entrenched in our politics that if you don't raise $1 billion in an election, you can't win. But what they've showed us in Hungary is that kind of helplessness is learned, and people seem to be onto it, which is just a wonderful thing. But we're gonna have to hit the ground running. If we get the triad, all three branches back, in any kind of sizable majority, immense change can happen. But the way our elections are laid out, it's not all going to happen at one time. First, we got to take back, Congress, because then we can do something about the stacked courts that Mitch McConnell gave us. Then we can do something about you know, the lawless disregard for constitutional law that our DOJ has showed us since the Supreme Court told Donald Trump he could fire anybody he wants. The first people to go were all the people that prosecuted him in the Mueller uh, investigation, and all the people that prosecuted that followed him in the Mueller investigation, all the people that prosecuted him in the criminal cases regarding January 6th, they're all gone. They are gone. I had the privilege to talk to one of them when I was fighting one of my cases outside the courtroom, and man, what they were putting these guys through is an inquisition. They gave them lie detectors. They questioned every expenditure they ever made with a microscope. This is what they've spent all of their time doing the last year. You wonder why nothing else got done. Well, they passed enormous taxes for exactly the people that Citizens United was targeted at, the billionaires, the Epstein class that can fill up, that they can the corruptible people. Maybe back one day Elon Musk, really wanted to improve the world, but as his millions started to grow, that became an end in its own. And it's sad, but he soon realized that spending a few million, greasing some palms, will get him billions in tax deductions with a corrupt administration, which is what we have. And uh, you know that money has fueled just hyper corruption in every branch of our government. And the Democrats have sort of gone along with it because they're like, well, we're going to need to raise funds or we're going to get our asses kicked. That's true of an electorate that's asleep. That's true of media where you control every media outlet. But that's not the way media is anymore. I mean, look around you. Look at Substack. Uh, you know, sure, it's a lot of the same people that were famous in the networks that were part of this whole circle, but they're here, and and many of them, even the ones that we would have guessed, are trying to affect change, and they're pissed off too. I don't blame them. Uh, you know, they were okay for corruption light, but overthrowing the country, I think far fewer were okay with what they planned with Project 2025. Once they see the rubber hit the road, once they see people being kidnapped in their house, once they see people swinging down from helicopters to, harass uh, people that hang out in front of the Home Depot to do home repair. I just, you know, there's no way that this is what the electorate wanted. Uh, the electorate wanted somebody to blame. Trump gives them a constant cycle of people to blame. First it was Mexicans, then it was Central America, then it's Venezuela, and then it's Greenland. Greenland, seriously, Greenland, Canada, all of our EU allies. Uh, I mean, he is America's first Soviet president. It's as simple as that. There's no other way to explain it. And, he gets what he wants from the Russians because they make him feel important and put him in important places. And, when they came along, he was pretty down on his luck with failed businesses and an inheritance that he completely squandered almost to zero at one point. And they get a flood of Russian money for Trump Tower uh, from Russian connected banks, Russian connected mob oligarchs uh, that are looking to launder just billions and billions and billions of dollars, more money than he has ever seen in his life. And these are the people that Those are his constituents. It's not you. And I think we all know that by now. But what can we do about it? Well, overthrowing a regime, which is what they did, has to come in steps. There's prescribed methods for it. The first target is the courts. They got control of the Supreme Court any way possible. They kept Barack Obama from his nominations even being considered. Uh, and they played some shenanigans with the elections, and next thing you know, they have a 6-3 majority, which is an unstoppable majority, unless uh, two of them have just an absolute crisis of conscience. Nothing gets through this court unless they decide to let it. You know, they have to keep some credibility, uh, and some separation from the executive, because you know otherwise you get hungry. You get what Hungary has done. People are going to be out in the streets with pitchforks by the end of this administration, and that's what this administration is preparing for. And they've been talking about it since his first administration. That's what they tried to do with the BLM protests. If you remember the, the military helicopters hovering over what was a largely peaceful crowd that got whipped up into a frenzy by police hitting them with tasers and and non-lethal weapons that were at the time illegal and are still war crimes to use on citizens. uh, and the Overton window of that has shifted so far. And if we're looking at what he's doing in Iran, is he's trying to put Democrats in the position to say no. No, I don't want the NSA going through all of my personal communications. No, I don't want uh, to to uh, uh, to let terrorists into the country. No, but I don't. But I also want it to be a humane country where everybody's treated equal, like our Constitution promises us. And we have given up all of that in the last year. It's all gone. It's not there. It's not there anymore. There is nobody at the DOJ that is looking out for you. The 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 the, the FBI of Elliot Ness is gone. The honest neutral player doesn't exist at any of our three-letter agencies right now. It's sad because it can't be rebuilt in a moment. If you look at how to grow a company, with a large number of people, there's a corporate culture that has to start in the right place to get to the right place, where uh, the people that were there had to be dedicated to. They're dedicated to not just the piece of paper in the Constitution, but they're dedicated to the idea of creating a place where people are free from a government that would you know would tell them what to do, what to think, where to when they got to go to work for how many hours. Uh, you know, it's it's the Soviet Union. I mean, your decisions don't get explicitly made for you, but you get boxed into this corner where you earn just enough every month that anything that interferes with that is a serious threat to your existence, to your family, to everybody that you care about. And as long as they're taking the rights away from those other people, maybe it'll get nicer for you. But it doesn't happen. It only gets worse. There's one crisis after another crisis after another crisis. And they're all self created crises. Crises are the fuel of all of his emergency powers. We've seen that played out in court. Have we ever seen an administration that's spent all of its efforts on taking away our rights instead of enforcing our rights? I could have never imagined a DOJ that would have somebody running the civil rights division that thinks the civil rights problem is that white people don't get enough advantages. They're the downtrodden class. Christians don't have a big enough say in everything. They should be running the government. It's Christian America. That was never what the founders intended. That's never what anybody intended. 5 years ago, anybody you told that to would have said you're crazy. Uh, well, that's what it is now. You have faith leaders in the Oval Office surrounding the president in a hug circle, uh, kneeling before him, like the second coming, comparing him to Jesus Christ, to the point where he even, this guy believes his own publicity, and and that's the problem. Is there any mistake you think that he posted that picture of him as Jesus healing the sick? I have no idea who he was healing there, but you know, holy fuck, the Overton window is unrecognizable, and it's been stressful for all of us. Uh, you know, COVID was isolated my children for their most formative years, uh, and had to you know try to get their education in just the worst circumstances. Uh, Ripped their mom away from our family, and for over a year, she was separated from us. We finally got her back in the Biden administration, uh, and then just as I was issued my passport, apparently, because I checked the date that it was issued just before Biden left office. They took another year because I was in these lawsuits with them. They took another year under the Trump administration to actually drop it in the mail. My wife of 24 years. You know, I, I'm we're not the perfect family, but it crushed us. And I'm not just doing this because I'm a madman. I'm doing it because we suffered horribly. And it's difficult for me to say that in court because so many people have suffered so much worse. So many of you have suffered so much worse. I'm luckier than most. I sold my company just before all this. And, I thought I had enough to retire on. But we're quickly running through it. I am going to have to go back to work. Um, I don't even know what that'll be because my industry is so upside down right now. Uh, I'm afraid to accept a job that's going to make me move and give up my mortgage or my house and have to refinance. At today's rates, uh, I the future is so uncertain. I really don't know what to say. It's but that's the reality we're all living in. We got to get through it. We got to get through to the other side and fight all the way. The protests that are happening in the streets are very important because it gives them the message that they're not invulnerable. It gives them the message they should be scared because the pitchforks are coming out, and maybe it's not to do violence, but people are angry, and they want their democracy back. They want to be able to know that when they go vote, that their vote is going to count. They they want to know that they're going to be able to vote without helicopters hovering over them and people shooting tear gas. They 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 want stability. But they need change too, and part of that is going to have to be us retaking the Constitution. We have to do the steps of the takeover plan that they did to rip it away from us are a roadmap to taking control of government. And for the right purposes, through legal methods, we're going to have to do that. But the good news is that the Constitution is on our side. It says the right things. It's just that, you've got a stacked court that declares that up is down and it doesn't matter. Uh, that has to be fixed. And we have to put pressure on them constantly. Uh, and it can't just be nibbling at the edges. I got these guys their jobs back. It's fantastic. Oh, the department doesn't exist anymore. Well, I got them some money. That's a good outcome, okay, and it's an important outcome because it reverses some of the damage. But the damage, the big damage, is done, and we're going to have to hit the ground running, you know, with some idea of, you know, how we're going to get these people out, and how we're going to uh, get rid of all the unconstitutional incentives that they've built around their whole mechanism. Because unless we do that first, we can't do any of it. Uh, it's not just enough to win back Congress. It's not just enough to win the presidency. You know, you can't you can't run a government of 30 million people who are unfaithful to the Constitution and look you know looking for a scheme they can get rich with. Uh, we've always had some of that. But like I said, this has been a 30-year project that I'll take you through in some of my other videos. But our country's been transformed, and all the incentives are upside down from what the Constitution very clearly instructs us to do. The Constitution was created by people that were against uh, against a, an unaccountable government. No kings is real. Uh, they wanted the Britons out, not because they thought the Britons were rotten people. I mean, a lot of them were British, but they were over here in a colony extracting wealth from this new territory, and it was all going to England because they weren't they weren't regarded as their own sovereign country. And that's where we are right now. I don't know who's running the country, but it ain't Congress, and it ain't Donald Trump, and you know, it's not our usual branches of government that are making the decision. I'll tell you who's making the decisions. At least 8 of them were seated at the inauguration, front row and center, while Congress people were booted to the curb. And not that anybody worth having there, would have wanted to be there, but it's uh, it's escaped our grasp, and taking it back is going to be hard work, but it has to be methodical work where you're willing to confront a corrupt system. You can't just play along with it and say, well, it's too bad that we have Citizens United, but as long as we do, we could out fundraise them. No, we can't. It is impossible to out fundraise them. You know, uh, there is until some of the incentives are changed. Even if we get a slate full of Democrats, a lot of them are going to be sitting on their hands, and the majority does us no good. It's so important that our majority uh, is faithful to the ideas that form this country. And the ideas that form this country are inclusiveness. As big of a stain as slavery was, and as big of a stain as many of our previous immigration problems were, many of them are due to the same people. Uh, it's it's never been left versus right. It's been conservative versus liberal. This is a liberal country. We have a liberal democracy. Our Constitution is so fucking liberal. But they had to make compromises at the constitutional conventions with the moneyed people, the moneyed landowners that came along with it. And the Reformation happened, after the Civil War, as a result of the Civil War, because those compromises they made was, well, we couldn't live with not spelling out that everybody's equal. Uh, but that's the logical, that's the logical direction we're all heading in. Just like we made a deal on healthcare, or made a deal with the devil with the ACA Act, uh, because of course Medicare for all would have been better for everybody. It would have been much cheaper to operate. We wouldn't have had insurance companies to deal with. And my God, decision panels, if you haven't run into those already, have you ever tried, to get care on something? You got to get second approvals. That's not because of the ACA. That's because we have insurance companies. And it's these death panels, they don't exist because of public health care. They exist because of profit. They just want to make profit on your misery. And it enriches them, the ones that are, uh, they're shoving all the money into our political system, and it gives them control. They get to have it their way completely. And we're in a wealth inequity period that is comparable to you know to French Revolution. You know, it, our streets aren't quite as muddy with peasants rolling things around in dirt, but the poverty's there. You're poor when you can't be sure that you can feed your family. You're poor when you can't be sure that if you break a leg, you're going to be able to afford the hospital bills. You're poor. You may have iPhones, you may have computers, you may have cars. These are trinkets. These are trinkets. Unless you have boats inside of boats and island hideaways that look like a bad guy in a James Bond movie might have as a fort, you are poor. You are the peasant class. I was a multimillionaire for a little while. uh, I'm the peasant class too, because I have to wonder, well, how am I going to make this money that I plan to, you know, provide for my family and myself and my kids for the rest of my life? How am I going to make that last in a world that's been turned upside down? Because I don't know what tomorrow is. Do you? You should. You deserve to. You worked all your life for it. Fight for it.